battle against lust is the battle of faith. It's a battle of faith. Every day, usually, some lustful thought will penetrate my mind. And at that very moment, I know I can choose. This is from long experience. I know that I can choose to kill it, to crucify it.
What Piper says here is both sobering and encouraging, because he doesn't pretend this battle goes away, but he does say there's a way through. I'm Dan Kruver. In this episode of Light and Truth, drawn from his book, The Pleasures of God, John Piper talks about the moment-by-moment fight to crucify lust and how faith changes what we see. This teaching was originally delivered at Bethlehem Baptist Church on Wednesday evening, March 25th, 1992.
Gracious Father, how do we do things so that you are pleased with them, we are made glad by them, others are blessed by them? How do we make it our goal to be a certain kind of person and do a certain kind of lifestyle without becoming legalists, without trying to earn anything, without falling under the crushing despair of our own imperfections and failures? Lord, this is so important tonight. And I don't think I have the last word on it, but Lord, you do. And I invite you to come and speak. And I just plead with you to make the truth plain in so much as we finite people can see it. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Well, we're not going to have time to answer all these 20 questions, so I'm going to skip some of them and try to focus on the ones that I think are the most crucial. Number one is kind of an introductory statement of what the chapter is about, so let me take that one briefly and then probably jump to number 6. What does obedience to God add to hope in God and prayer in fulfilling God's purpose to make known His glory? Now, understand the structure of the book. It began with 6 chapters about God's pleasures in what He is and what He does, pretty much separate from our human responses. And then there was a shift of focus, and we touched on God's pleasure in the response of hope, God's pleasure in those who hope in His love. And we said that the reason He delights in hope is because when you hope in somebody, you reveal how trustworthy they are and how satisfying they are. Your hope in God is a reflection back to God of all His hopefulness and His satisfaction. That hope, we said in the next chapter, chapter 8, comes to expression in desires that you say to God. That's prayer. If you hope in Him, then you're going to say, I need you. I need your help. And that carries the glory of God a step farther, because not only is your hope there sort of invisibly echoing back to God His worth, but then your mouth starts to open up and express that hope, and it becomes a little more externalized through prayer. Now, this chapter is the final externalization of the glory of God, which I get from Matthew 5:16. Let your light so shine before men that they might see your good works, your obedience, and give what? Glory to your Father who's in heaven. God is in the business. The reason He created the world is to externalize His glory. The reason you exist is to externalize the glory of God. It starts with hope. It moves out to prayer. And then it moves out totally externalized into obedience. So tonight, we just moved to that third and final stage of externalization. Obedience, life, living, what you do at the office, what you do at home, how you act, how you talk, things you touch others with, how you behave. That's all for God's sake, according to Matthew 5:16. So that's the flow of the book, and that's where we are. I think I'm going to jump to question 7. Question 7. If the commands of God are like a doctor's prescription to help cure us from the disease of sin, and not like a job description to show us how to earn wages. Now let me just stop there, because I'm just assuming that that's true. And that's one of the greatest discoveries I've ever made in my life, that little sentence. That the law of God, the Sermon on the Mount, the 10 Commandments, the long lists of things that I've been memorizing in Romans 12, bless those who persecute you, bless and do not curse them, rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep, and live in harmony with all men, and do not be arrogant, do not be conceited, inasmuch as it depends on you, live in harmony with everybody, don't repay anybody evil for evil, do, all the do's in the Bible, millions of them, well that's an overstatement, lots of them. Now what are they? And I just hope you take this away tonight. Maybe this one image will just save you from all kinds of terrible legalism. They are a doctor's prescription, not a job description. The difference between a doctor's prescription and a job description is that a job description is designed for you to prove your worth to an employer that you might get wages. A doctor's prescription does prove anything to your doctor except whether you trust him or not. It's a world of difference. If you can get a hold of those two, wow, it'll just revolutionize the way you read the Bible, the way you approach obedience. If you're thinking job description, it's all over. It's just legalism to the core, and the book of Galatians is written to say that Paul hated legalism more than he hated fornication. But if you get a handle on the doctor's prescription, then you hear love behind every commandment. Take the aspirin. It's good for you. It'll take away your headache not to have sex outside marriage. It's good for you to return good for evil. It's good for you. It will make you stronger. It will make you happier. It will make you purer. It's good for you not to steal at work. It's good for you not to lie on your tax returns. It's good for you not to be grouchy with your wife or irritable with your children. These are doctor's prescriptions. So that's my goal, is to help you get a handle on that tonight and ask how faith works in that. Now my answer, I didn't finish the question. If that's true, why is it good news that God delights in obedience? And the answer is just so simple, because that means he delights in you getting well. It means he cares about you. You know, a doctor might give you a good prescription and not care about you, but God delights in your obedience. That is, he delights in you taking the medicine of the 10 Commandments and taking the medicine of the Sermon on the Mount. Because he likes you to get well. He's for you. He's not just in this medical business for the perks of whatever doctors get. He is in it because he delights to see people get well. Number 8. What are some texts from the Old and New Testament to show that the command for obedience was never meant by God to be an onerous burden? Deuteronomy 30:11, for example, is one of the texts that I meant to be written down and answered in question 8. This commandment, Moses says, which I command you today, is not too hard for you. That's what Moses said. And Paul quotes it in Romans 10. Here's Jesus. If you think the Sermon on the Mount is too hard, listen. Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Now, you know what a yoke is? We have farmers here. At least the pictures I've seen of yoke. The oxen have this big wooden thing around, and then you connect it and it goes back and you can pull things with it. And it's heavy. It's on your neck and you use it to work. It's not an attractive image. And Jesus says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me. In other words, my yoke is my teaching. For I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you'll find rest. When you take my yoke on you, this big heavy wooden yoke of all my teaching, you'll find rest for your souls. That's the way you should feel when you take what the medicine the doctor gives you, you sleep better. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. He's talking about teachings there. The Sermon on the Mount is easy. Well, in the Sermon on the Mount itself, it says, the way is hard that leads to life, and few there be that find it. And the way that leads to destruction is easy, and many there are that find it. There's nothing harder than faith, and nothing easier than faith. It's just different kinds of hardness and easiness. Faith is easy. It's. Some of you remember this image. I said, if I've thrown this out half a dozen times over the last 12 years. If there's any artist in the crowd who wants to give me a 25th wedding anniversary or something, a gift, it would be a picture that you paint that would have me painted like an oxen with a yoke on me, face John Piper and I guess 4 legs or whatever you do to make me look like an oxen. And there would be a big yoke upon my shoulder like this, and it would all go back and it'd be hooked to a plow that Jesus has in his hands like this. And you see the muscles, these big Schwarzenegger forearm muscles of Jesus would be bulging, and his wrists would be like this, and he would be doing, and my feet would be about 3 inches off the ground, hanging in the yoke, and he's holding me like this in the yoke, plowing, pushing the plow like this. Isn't that great? Now, every image is inadequate. I know that one is, because Christian life is not just dangling. I know that, but it is at its essence dangling. If you haven't learned to dangle in the yoke, rest in the yoke, trust in the yoke, trust in the plowman, the doctor is going to use you, get things done, then probably you will sweat your way to heaven. Or you'll become a person who doesn't think you need to do anything, and that may not get you there either. Here's another one. 1 John 5:3. This is the love of God, that we keep his commandments, and his commandments are not burdensome. His commandments are not burdensome. 1 John 5:3. Now if you say, well, you're talking another language because they're burdensome to me, thou shalt not covet is the burdensome commandment. Thou shalt not lust. If you lust, gouge out your eyes. That's the burdensome commandment. Well, all we're documenting when we point out the burdensome of a commandment is that we are not yet there in terms of trusting the provision and the alternative to the joy that comes through the sin. We're still disbelieving. I know that. The battle against lust is the battle of faith. It's a battle of faith. Every day, usually, some lustful thought will penetrate my mind. And at that very moment, I know I can choose. This is from long experience. I know that I can choose to kill it, to crucify it. And I know the pattern of thought that it takes to do that in my life. Where I need to put my mind, what I need to say in prayer, how vicious I need to be against that thought and the rebuke of the demons that are assaulting. And if the pleasure of contemplating the thought is strong enough that it overcomes my belief that the pleasure and purity is greater, then it will win. It's a faith issue. We're going to get into this more deeply so that you realize that faith is not just, I believe Jesus died for my sins. That's not the main issue in faith. That's the beginning step of faith. Faith believes that He's worthy.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Light and Truth, where we are committed to providing God-centered preaching to help you see Christ clearly and treasure Him truly. I'm your host, Dan Kruver. On our next episode, John Piper concludes our two-part series, The Doctor's Prescription for Joy, with a message titled, God's Commands Are for Your Joy. I hope you'll join us. For more resources, visit desiringgod.org.